down the road in my big old truck, and I'm going back home, and I'm feeling lucky. Heading south of Watford, south of Watford. Turning down the motorway and heading south with the heavy, heavy eyes and the dry dirt mouth, going south of Watford, south of Watford. Motorway's coming like a video game at 100 miles an hour. The old truck groans and the wheels complain, but I can't go any slower. South of Watford, south of Watford.
So, I was spawned in Tufnell Park. That's no more than a stone's throw from the Angel, a monkey's far from Tottenham, or a bolt of phlegm from Stamford Hill. It's a cesspit, right, a scumhole dense with the drabs who prop up the corner pub, the kind of pub where ye old arseholes assemble, the boring turds that save for Christmas with clubs. My mum did that. Save all year for a boozy Christmas party of dreary old relatives in Marks and Sparks cardigans who stand around all year doing as little as they can, with one hand on the boss's till and the other scratching their balls. So they'd come over and vomit up Guinness and Mum's unspeakable excuse for cuisine all over the bathroom. Adjust their dentures, rage against the blacks, envying their cocks. Loathe the yids, envying their girls. Hate anything that walks under 30. And fall asleep in front of the telly. So, they'd gather in the corner pub, usually run by a rancid, thick as pig shit Paddy, who sold nothing but booze and crisps in various chemical flavours to his yokel patrons, who played incessant games of darts, drank yards of stale Nats piss beer, and chatter like, see Arsenal last week. I think England's team's all washed up. Yeah, not about the way he dribbled the ball then. Nah, he lost his bottle. Do leave off.
Steven Berkoff, perhaps Britain's most controversial writer, actor and director. You either love him or you hate him. And it seems to be mainly hate as far as most of the critics and the theatrical establishment are concerned. But regardless of that, Berkoff has managed to carve out a unique position for himself, and he packs out theatres at home and abroad whenever his work is performed. Berkoff, or at least the characters in his plays, seem to take a pretty bleak view of London, not to mention its drinking places. But despite that, the capital seems to have been the main source of inspiration for a number of his plays. East, its sequel West, for instance. So tonight, we're going to have a look at Steven Berkoff and his work in the context of Islington, and that slab of northeast London where he was born, bred, and despite the diatribes, still lives.
I don't really live here anymore. I kind of pass through it and I travel around. I think since I work in the English language, it tends to be difficult to spend a lot of time elsewhere. And since I've chosen to excavate this territory of my youth, and I've mined from it the three plays, which is East and West and Greek and even Decadence, and consequently, there's an area which I've surveyed and mined and used material from, so it's difficult for me to live elsewhere. So I think that I will perform the plays here, since this is still a place where you can just about do some theatre. And so you come back, and also I'm a bit like kind of a Pavlov dog. Once you get used to something, you return to your roots, as if you've got an invisible elastic band. You suddenly, you're enjoying yourself too much elsewhere, and you think, I think I'll go back to a bit of suffering, a bit of dreariness, some cold weather, a few strikes, a bit of violence, a bit of unemployment. Yeah, it's nice. It's a grist to your mill, you see. And if you're put in a position of suffering or struggle, you get maybe drawn back into that.
The London which Berkoff knew and constantly returns to is a very specific one, mapped out by the bus routes which he first ventured onto from his home base in Islington. The 38 and 19 route, linking this area to the West End, have a sort of magical significance for Berkoff, and his plays make frequent reference to some of the landmarks along the way. Islington Green, Essex Road, Cambridge Circus, Shaftesbury Avenue. He's been reluctant to explore or write about parts of London which are more than a stone's throw away from a 38 or 19 bus stop.
I have ventured on a 73. I'm not mad about it. I must say, I don't like going past King's Cross. There's nothing to get off for at King's Cross. There's one or two little areas as Euston, but it makes me feel very uneasy at 73. A 38 or 19 is all right. 30 is right out. That's a write-off. A 653 used to be good because they used to take me right from Commercial Road, same route. And on the 653 bus, you can go down Trafalgar Square, then to the Strand, Lyceum, you've got dance halls there, and you've got Leicester Square 51, little jazz club. That was fine. But otherwise, so far, the 38's been handsome.
Although Berkoff is intrigued by real, even mundane aspects of London life, his work is far from literal or naturalistic. In fact, plays like West are heavily stylised, both in their language and the acting techniques they demand.
I'm known as the Avenger! When they see me, they do quote! For they see before their runny eyes! A short pathway to ultra-violence! And a swiftly sensual!
It is a kind of a verbal, imaginative map of London based on what I know. It's not a view of London in a real sense. I mean, I'm not making a documentary. Some people say, and they see my plays on stage, they say, oh, well, I'm doing an insult to the working class in the East End. You know, my plays aren't really expressing their kind of ridiculous satires. Well, of course, my play is a satire. I mean, London is not just the East End Cockney. The East End Cockney he's a hybrid mixture of Irish, of all sorts of different areas and regions of England, of Jewish, and between this, there is an amalgam. So the area I chose to express was this mixture. And therefore, I put into the plays, there's Cockney argot, and there's invented language, there's even bits of Yiddish. So it's an amalgam of styles and of language.
West is a real hybrid, written in Shakespearean blank verse, but based on the ancient Beowulf saga, in which the hero takes on a monster. Berkoff copies the original by having his hero, Mike, take on a rival gang from Hoxton. Real monsters.
I had speeches for Mike that gave him this tremendous kind of battle cry. And that's what I wanted to put in plays. I wanted to put in plays battle cries, you know, heroic speeches defining their young energy and their spirit and their idealism, which you very rarely see in theatre, because most theatre just drives me to sleep.
Unarm me! By heaven, I'll make a corpse of him that lets me. I say, away! I warned you. What did I say? You were seduced by Snatch, your watchman fast asleep. He's potion drugged, no doubt. Allow yourselves to be disarmed, floating in the ether of vile lust, so's not to hear the hobnail boots they always wear, toes still capped in dread. You mugs! What are you? We're friends, like you. I don't need enemies. You were that shrewdy buddy Hoxton fiend, who's celebrating now, no doubt, in city arms, carousing with his chinas on. How easy it was, after all. Laughing with loud chortles, whilst the blast of shame sits on our brows like the ill mark of Cain. No comes in.
I come unarmed, from Hoxton's mighty king, to give a message to he that calls himself the Prince of Darkness, the King of Stamford Hill, or just plain stip it in, mate.
I know him by many names, but those will do. Say what your business is and blow, you emissary from the underworld where sunshine never comes and days are choked in hell's polluted smoke. Say what brings you here to gloat upon your master's cowardice and treachery.
Cut out the patter, man, and just cock an ear to what my honoured master hath to spout.
You dare to speak like that, you poisonous pest!
Let him go.
Much of Berkoff's work draws on his experiences as a youth, but while West is largely about gang warfare, East, its companion piece, is preoccupied with a different kind of young, working-class energy. Dancing and dressing up are two of its main themes.
You were defined by, you know, who you were as, you know, either a dancer or if you're a fighter, you know, handled, you know, your mitts, which I didn't like to be in that, so I'd rather go for the dance, you see. So in the scale of power, you were quite high if you're a dancer, and the equal side if you're, you know, the geezer used to call a starker and he could handle himself. So I used to go dancing. The Lyceum, you see, was a place you dress up and you go dancing and you define yourself. You wore stiff collars then. It was a particular period in the mid-50s, very extraordinary period where it was a teddy boy period, but it had something added to it because the teddy boy we associate with thick crepe shoes and greasy hair, sluggish looking. But there was another style which also had the hair, but it wore stiff collars and often very smart ties, you know, cufflinks, collar studs, the whole works, looking very, very elite, and these wonderful suits they took, you know, a whole year to buy, and you had 2 or 3 suits, and then that was it. Your suit was your front to the world.
I fancy going down the Lyceum tonight. I double fancy that. Being as it's Sunday, we'll have Mr. Ted Heath there, the famous band leader, not the acid bath murderer or notorious political impersonator. Come weekend, hello, sailor. And we'll have Mr. Dickie Valentine, the singer, in a blue gabardine, patch pockets, button one, hip-length, whistle and flute. I'll wear a roll-away collar, a Johnny Ray collar that sails out the neck, and a skinny tie, a Slim Jim. French cuffs on the trouser, and a 15-inch bottom. Yeah. What about that handsome Donegal tweed, DB lapels, patch pockets, button one, drop loops and cross pockets on the trousers, satin-lined, with a 15-inch slit at the arse of the jacket and a skirted waist. What, that one? Oh, yeah, fits you beautiful. Fingertip length, velvet collar, and plenty of pad in the chest. Come on, Marie, I said more padding. Of course. When we were geary, we pulled. Not all slags neither, but you need wheels. No point in pulling without wheels, or you end up in Edmonton and having to walk all the way back to Commercial Road at 3 in the morning with, as likely as not, nothing to show for it, except the J. Arthur, reluctantly given, at the point of a 7-inch honed and sharpened shift menacing a jugular. Hello, darling. Fancy a dance?
The characters in East may experience a kind of liberation through the dance hall, but they also feel fatalistically trapped by the drudgery of work, as Berkoff, the son of an immigrant Russian tailor, did himself. Before he became an actor, his first job, after leaving school at 15, was in a small menswear shop, an experience which he regarded as a way of death rather than life.
There was nothing for an unskilled, untutored, uneducated imbecile like myself to do. But there's one thing we could do, and that's work in a menswear shop. And so we seemed to work in an area where everybody worked in the menswear trade because that was the kind of legacy we'd been, you know, left to us by our parents who were tailors. That seemed quite skilled. It was quite honorable profession. But my father always said to me, "I don't want you becoming a tailor." I don't know why he said that, but this was like a ritual cry I used to hear when I used to kind of, from time to time, mention the fact I was going to leave school. And anybody said, "What do you want to do?" And I said, "Well, I won't be a tailor." So my mother thought, "Well, why don't you go and you could be a manager of Cecil G after 5 years, you know? Really, look, Steve, it's a nice job. Look, Henry down the road, he's manager of Conics. There's a Dalston shop and there's one in Golders Green and there's one in Finchley. It's a very nice job." I was working in this dump, impersonating Frankenstein, place where you stood around pretending to be busy. One of those stores where you try to con people into buying what they didn't want. A grimy little menswear shop, not a geary boutique, but full of grotty little striped ties and collar studs. Don't forget to dust the cufflinks, Liz. Straighten out the ties, Liz. Where you stood there, dying and acquiring bad breath, pot buying for a pathetic wet customer to bleed. Horrible beige pullovers bought by the wives of Irish navvies who've been back to change it half a dozen times. Of course, we always bunged them whatever size we had in stock.
Don't take a swap, Les. Get their girls. They can always change it.
Incredibly crummy blazers, hanging in a rack like dead fish on parade. Shirts with drab little collars and a million pins in two-tone check that hangmen and clerks would buy with a shit-coloured tie to go with it. Maybe a cardigan in maroon.
This month's colour.
The wives trotting round the mirror, anxious for their 50 bob. The manager's loathsome mask that he wears for a face. Creases like Fu Manchu.
A nice tie to go with it, sir. How you fix the shirts? Okay.
His eyes look like two gobs of phlegm. He sit in the back room where they kept those fucking horrible wide front pants that make it look like a rupture case. He sit there so greasy you could fry him in that little back room having his crummy little tea break.
Here, Les, go get us a cake, a chocolate eclair or something.
He's looked forward to tea break and a day that poured down boredom like yellow piss. His frog's eyes bulging in case you didn't sell the shop-soiled crew neck 6 sizes too large to some innocent black sod.
Yeah, fits you beautiful. Lovely shade. Goes with anything.
Berkoff's attack on the 8-hour day would be unbearably pessimistic if it wasn't for the energy with which his work is performed. He's developed his technique and style of theatre over the years. This was after he'd escaped from that menswear shop, gone to RADA and acted in Rep. But Berkoff and the conventional stage didn't get on for long. After a period in France studying mime, he formed an experimental company, the London Theatre Group. In the late 60s and early 70s, their stage adaptations of Kafka earned Berkoff an international reputation. And the mime techniques they developed over this period became a hallmark of their work.
No, we'd mimed everything. So we mimed the whole, even the temperament. We could mime a temperament, mime an emotion. And so the actors became the set and the environment, which meant that we liberated the actor from merely being a mouthpiece for the writer and made him an autonomous performer in his own right, where he would be both the kind of environment, the elements of the play, he would suggest it all, he would be the narration plus the actor. And we developed through necessity a form of theatre which became much more vital because it made a responsibility on the audience also to pay attention to what was going on.
Start up, my beauty, once more. Nice and gently. Open the throttle, no more than an 8. Oops. Depress the kickstarter. Now feel it coming to life. She's warming down there. She's buzzing down there. She's loving it now. She's randy. Kick the starter in the jack, see? Smash the brute down. That! She rises like it had teeth, like it was hungry, like it knew where to go. And she sings to me, everything's beautiful. I'm a Harley Davidson. Oh, I'm a Moto Guzzi. I fly like a king. I kill like a sting. I smash down the road. I crush those other fuckers, those Hell's Angels, like toads. Oh, I run out of petrol.
Once the machine is there, once the audience have accepted certain techniques, like what we call fixed point, you put your arms in, the bike's starting. Once they believe with their own mind there is a machine there, then the machine can do wondrous things. The machine can take off, you can spin it around the place, you can kind of turn round on it, you can do anything. And they'll laugh because they have gone with you into this area that they believe you're riding a bike. They've accepted it. So when you do crazy things on the bike, they're with you, and when you suddenly they are shocked if you crash. And I've seen the audience react when I've done this particular thing because they are donating their imagination. Now, in a conventional theatre, I'm just taking the example of the bike, they put the real set there. Whether it's the real sofa or the real bike or the real car or the real bed. Consequently, the audience's mind is damaged by seeing a physical representation in what should be fantasy, which is theatre. Theatre is for the imagination.
The London Theatre Group was disbanded in 1981, but the imaginative use of mime, like Berkoff's mixture of linguistic styles, continues to give his work a particular stamp, even when he's having a go at a better class of person, as in the restaurant scene in Decadence.
Filet mignon! With oysters crushed in sauces. Oh, that sounds a muscle of 2 of those. Some escargot on the side. Oh, this simply divine, cooked in sweet herbs and wine. Some mouton Rothschild chilled to a thaw. Delicious. Let's have some more. I slice the steak. Its blood runs free. Raw as a wound. Soft as a kiss. I embrace it. I swallow the last ecstatic piece. It flows like lava into me. A mountain of asperges. A forest of champignons. Shove it all in and still this room. More champagne, darling. It showers away the fish and the garlic, the slightly acid taste, the burp, excuse me, the sliver of nausea that starts to grow from compound of oysters, prawns, beef, salmon. The sparkly flows are fresh again, darling. Order. What do you say?
More champagne, darling.
My God, you're stacking it away. More champagne!
Over the years, Berkoff has also acted on the big screen, toning down his style for films like McVicar. The movies have been a way of financing further theatrical exploits. He seems to favour rather violent films like Clockwork Orange and hit of the month, Rambo. Prior to that, he played the villain in Beverly Hills Cop with Eddie Murphy.
Filming is like time, like a holiday, a little time off. So what I do on the stage in one night, say in Decadence, I would spend 6 weeks, say, doing a film in, say, LA or even in London. The actual energy output would take like 2 months in the film, and then in the film everybody says, "Oh, I saw you in that film. It was great. You were wonderful, this and that." And you think you've done just, you know, not very much. It hasn't meant much to you. You just walked on and, you know, done your lines and told, "All right, get you into your car and piss off."
You know, Victor, I know that you're into a lot of crooked shit, and I have a pretty good idea that you had Mikey killed. And when I find out for sure, I'm gonna fuck you up real bad.
Is that so? Now listen to me, my tough little friend. I don't know from under what stone you crawled, or where you get these ridiculous ideas about me. But it seems painfully obvious you haven't the slightest fucking idea who you're dealing with. Now, my advice to you is crawl back to your little stone in Detroit before you get squashed. Okay?
Please step away from the table, sir. Gotta go now, Vic.
Nice meeting you again.
Yeah. Catch you later, Vic.
I can't wait.
Screen acting is perhaps too low-key and laid back for Berkoff. He prefers the full frontal impact of his stage work. But its very strength polarises the critics. So, in spite of a lot of acclaim, especially abroad, Greek, for instance, won the Los Angeles Player of the Year award, Berkoff gets a lot of flack. In breaking away from what he sees as the middle-class conventions of the English stage, he's upset a lot of reviewers and woken up a lot of audiences, often with disturbing results.
Well, to turn then to criticisms of your work, and I think the most common one, and one that I'd be surprised if you couldn't see where it came from, at least, is that your work is sexist, that it degrades women. So how would you answer that?
I can't believe anyone would say that. I'm shocked, and I'm blushing, I think. No, I think it's you know, anybody who says that just rattle their trees. You know, it's very clear that my work is, in fact, quite the reverse. It's actually feminist. In Greek, I have the speech of the Sphinx, who condemns men being responsible for all the aggression and ill and poison of mankind through the male macho greed. In East, the woman stands up there and says, you know, what a destructive life it is to be a woman in this situation. She wants to be like a fella, not really, but she kind of satirically says, I for once would like to be a fella, unwholesome, both in word and deed, and stand around one leg cocked up, car keys tinkling on my pinky. You know, the women who act in my play say that it gives them the greatest satisfaction to be able to express a woman's point of view and to feel like a woman, and the same thing in West, balanced. But what I do is I satirize human attitudes. I satirize both male and female. I mean, in the bike, the geezers say, "What is some aging movie star?" But I'm satirizing the youth that is socially uneducated and therefore focuses his whole life on release, the bike, the sex, the punch-up. I'm not advocating this. I'm showing that with a narrow view, your releases are in those areas. Art should not ever begin to express some kind of balanced thing. Art is schizophrenic. It's based on the paranoidal view of life. And the motorbike is. And if it was going to be balanced, what would I be writing? I mean, Carnation Street?
Certainly, there's not a trace of soft soap in Berkoff's work. It's too extreme for that. And the mirror which he holds up to life and to London gives back a distorted reflection. Take it or leave it.
The plague is not quite over yet. There's still a plague around this city, darling, that will not go away. Caused, some say, by some evil deed that has not purged itself, but continues to rot away inside the wholesome body of our state. People are dropping like flies. Armed killers snipe from the shattered eyes of buildings, and death stalks in the foul and pestilent breath of friends whose eyes are drunk with envy and greed at your success. People shake your hands with limp grips, as if afraid to catch it. The illness of inertia, and should I, shan't I, the country's awash in chemicals that suit the brain to dullness, to dull the dullness of grinding hips long bored with ancient habit. And lovers are afraid to stroke each other's groins, lest new laws against the spreading of the plague outlaw them. Masturbating shops line every high street, and the pneumatic drill of strong right wrists ensure a girl a fat living. The country's awash in spunk, not threshing or sweetening the wombs of lovers, but crushed in Kleenex and dead in cubicles with red lights. Meanwhile, men in white masks are penetrating the holy crucible where life may have slipped in, and armed with scalpels and suction pumps tear out the living fruit and sluice it down the river of sewage. The blood and plasma of creation is swept and flushed away with gasps of don't inside the tender packages not yet fulfilled.
That's the plague at work, all right. There's something rotten in this city which will not go away.